The night that should have been filled with laughter, silver balloons, and a toast to 25 years of marriage, was the night I was handed divorce papers. Yes, you heard that right. Not whispered in private, not spoken with trembling regret, but declared in front of all our guests, as if it were some kind of performance. 25 years is long enough, Darren Price, my husband, announced. His voice was calm, steady, almost proud. I want someone young now. And Naomi, he turned to me, his eyes cold and rehearsed. You need to be out of the condo by tomorrow. The room froze. I heard a fork clatter onto a porcelain plate. Someone coughed, then went silent. The pianist's hands hovered midair, the note suspended like a question no one dared answer. And then I saw her. In the corner, Darren's mother, Celeste Price. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Not warm, not maternal, but satisfied. Like a chess player watching the final move land exactly as planned. For a moment the ground beneath me tilted. 25 years of marriage, reduced to humiliation. A quarter century of my life, cast aside as if it were disposable. But Darren had forgotten something. I knew a secret, and when I revealed it, the smile would vanish from Celeste's face. Darren's voice would tremble, and the life they thought they'd stolen would crumble. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand that night, to understand the weight of the papers Darren handed me, you need to know where it all began. Because betrayal never appears fully formed. It begins as whispers, as glances, as cracks too small to notice, until the wall collapses on top of you. My name is Naomi Sterling. If you had told the 22-year-old version of me that this would be my life, that 25 years later, I'd be blindsided by the man I married, I would have laughed. Back then I believed in neatness. Numbers. Balance sheets. I was studying accounting at Georgetown, living in a cramped apartment with second-hand furniture but dreams as wide as the Potomac. That's when I met Darren Price. He was tall, confident, with an energy that filled every room he entered. Not rich, but he carried himself like he would be someday. Ambition dripped from him the way cologne does from a man who's dressed too carefully. He noticed me in the library. Me, the girl with glasses sliding down her nose, buried in ledgers and calculations. You're always here, he said one night, leaning casually against the shelf where I was stacking books. Don't you ever live a little? I glanced up, startled. Numbers are my living. And what about your life? He shot back with that cocky grin. That grin would become my undoing. Darren courted me with late-night pizza, whispered promises of travel, and bold declarations about the future. He made me feel as though he saw something in me no one else did. We married a year later. My parents, humble, hard-working people, gave us this condo as a gift. At the time I thought it was just a place to live. I didn't know it would become the battlefield of my marriage. The first years were good. Or at least they looked good in photos. We had dreams. A family, children, maybe even a dog. He was tall, confident, with an energy that filled every room he entered. Not rich, but he carried himself like he would be someday. Ambition dripped from him the way cologne does from a man who's dressed too carefully. He noticed me in the library. Me, the girl with glasses sliding down her nose, buried in ledgers and calculations. You're always here, he said one night, leaning casually against the shelf where I was stacking books. Don't you ever live a little? I glanced up, startled. Numbers are my living. And what about your life? He shot back with that cocky grin. That grin would become my undoing. Darren courted me with late-night pizza, whispered promises of travel, and bold declarations about the future. He made me feel as though he saw something in me no one else did. We married a year later. My parents, humble, hard-working people, gave us this condo as a gift. At the time I thought it was just a place to live. I didn't know it would become the battlefield of my marriage. The first years were good. Or at least they looked good in photos. We had dreams. A family, children, maybe even a dog. But I saw it. His left eye twitched. It always twitched when he lied. And I thought, what do you do when you notice the man you've trusted for 25 years twitch with every word he says? Do you confront him? Or wait for the truth to expose itself? It was a gray October morning when I first felt the weight of suspicion settling on my chest. Darren's phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with a calendar reminder. Call S at 11 a.m. Just one letter. S. I stood there by the window, watering the plants, watching the fog cling to the streets below. My heart pounded harder than it should have over a single letter. When Darren came out adjusting his tie, I asked lightly, "Who's S?" For the briefest second he froze. His hand paused mid-knot. Panic flashed in his eyes, so quick anyone else would have missed it. But I had studied that face for 25 years. Then, as if a switch flipped, he smirked. "Sanchez. A colleague. From Seattle. Seattle. Always Seattle." I smiled faintly, pretending to accept it. But inside a question screamed, why did his eye twitch just now? Because it did. His left eye, that tiny muscle betraying the lie as it always had. That night I woke to whispers. The hardwood creaked in the hallway, and Darren's voice murmured low, tense. "We have to do this right," he whispered into the phone. "She won't suspect a thing." And then another voice, faint but chilling. "Celeste. Of course not, son. She never suspects." I lay in bed, stiff, pretending to sleep. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he would hear it through the walls. What mother conspires with her son against his wife in the dead of night? When Darren returned to the room, his steps cautious, I shut my eyes. He slid into bed, careful not to wake me. But his body was tense, restless, radiating secrets. As I lay there, unable to sleep, my mind betrayed me with memories. Darren in the library, grinning at me over a stack of books. Darren promising we'd travel to Italy for our 5th anniversary. Darren whispering on our wedding day, "Forever, Naomi. No matter what. Send the next section whenever you're ready, thumbs up." The same lips that now lied at 3 a.m. I almost laughed at the irony. Back then I had believed forever was a promise. Now I knew it was just a word. 2 days later, Celeste appeared again. She never knocked. She simply arrived, like royalty inspecting her estate. "Naomi dear," she cooed, slipping off her gloves as though she owned the place. "Are you preparing for the anniversary? Darren deserves a proper celebration. Nothing small. A hotel perhaps. With guests. That would reflect his importance." Her eyes swept the room, pausing on every imperfection. She settled into the armchair, smoothing her skirt with an exaggerated grace. "You know, Naomi, Darren isn't young anymore. 53. Time moves quickly. No children, such a pity. Don't you think it's wise to prepare? To write a will. For my nephews, of course. Bright boys. Promising futures." I stared at her. A chill ran down my spine. Then she asked it, as if it were nothing. "By the way, where do you keep the condo papers?" The words hung in the air. Sweetly spoken. Venom disguised as sugar. That was the moment I understood. To her I wasn't family. I was an obstacle. The next morning Darren was unusually tender. "My love," he said, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "Shall we choose the restaurant today? I want everything to be perfect." Perfect. Again. He rushed out with unusual energy, smelling of a new cologne, sharp, expensive, foreign. I stood by the window staring at the gray sky, my chest tightening. 25 years of marriage had taught me one thing. Darren never did anything without a reason. And now every gesture, every word, every cologne-drenched kiss carried a hidden purpose. Something was coming. Something meant for me. I remembered the first time Celeste had made me feel small. It was Thanksgiving years ago. I had spent the entire day cooking. Turkey, pies, cranberry sauce from scratch. Celeste had sat at the table, smiling politely, barely eating. When dessert was served, she dabbed her lips with her napkin and said, "Naomi dear, it was lovely. But you know, in our family, we always believe the way to a man's heart is through grandchildren, not pies." Everyone laughed politely. I smiled, my cheeks burning. Darren said nothing. That silence had been the beginning. And now, decades later, it was clear. Celeste had never stopped sharpening her knife. That night, as Darren showered, I entered his study. His laptop glowed faintly on the desk. I typed his old password. Wrong. My stomach dropped. In 25 years, he had never once changed it. I tried his birthday. Celeste. Our wedding date. Nothing. Then it hit me, our wedding date reversed. Click. The screen unlocked. My hand shook as I opened the browser history. And there it was. Line after line. Search after search. How to divorce when shared assets exist. Spousal rights in property division. How to keep the condo in a divorce. Legal tricks for dividing assets. Each one a blade. each one cutting deeper than the last. I stood frozen, the blue glow of the screen washing over me, until I whispered to myself, "He's planning it. He's really planning it." The next day, the phone rang while I was folding laundry. Candace's name flashed on the screen. She'd been my friend since college, the kind who always spoke the truth, even when it stung. "Naomi," she said breathlessly, "you won't believe what I just saw." My hand froze on the folded towel. "What is it, Candace?" "I was at Tyson's Galleria, the jewelry store, and I saw Darren." My throat tightened. Darren, yes. And Naomi, he wasn't alone. The room tilted. With who? A woman. Young. Blonde. Maybe 30. Expensive coat. The kind of woman who looks like she spends more time in salons than at home. My hand trembled against the phone. "They were looking at rings, Naomi," she whispered. "Not casually. Not for business." She was clinging to him. Hugging him. They were laughing. Like a couple in love. For a long moment I couldn't speak. "Naomi? Are you there?" "Yes," I managed, my voice thin. "Thank you for telling me, Candace. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. When I hung up, the condo was silent. But inside me a storm roared. That evening Darren came home with roses. A bouquet too large, too polished. Red, flawless, as though chosen not for love but for effect. "For my one and only true love," he declared, pressing a box of chocolates into my hand. His smile was wide, rehearsed. I looked at the flowers, then at him. "One and only," I repeated softly, my voice steady, though my heart trembled. He kissed me, lingering, but I noticed the faintest trace of perfume again. Sweet. Feminine. Not mine. That night I sat in the living room alone, the bouquet in front of me. I stared at the roses until their edges blurred. Do you know what it feels like to receive flowers not as a gesture of love, but as evidence of betrayal? I felt like I was sitting across from a stranger wearing my husband's face. I wanted to scream, to throw the roses into the trash, to confront him and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I whispered to myself, "Not yet. Not without proof." The next morning, when Darren left for an early meeting, I logged into our joint bank account. The numbers hit me like a slap. $30,000. Gone. Not in one swoop, but in careful, calculated withdrawals. Thousands here. Thousands there. The transactions told the story. Jewelry stores, hotel bills, restaurants we had never dined at together, and, most damning, payments to a law firm. They were building a new life. With my money. I let out a bitter laugh that caught in my throat. An accountant betrayed not by numbers, but by the man she trusted most. That night, Darren returned home glowing, as though carrying a secret joy. "Naomi, my love," he said smoothly, "how about we finalize the restaurant tomorrow? I want everything perfect." That word again. Perfect. But all I saw was the bank statement burned into my mind, the digits shrinking with every withdrawal. I smiled faintly, nodding. "Yes, Darren. Perfect." Inside, I made a silent promise. "You may think you're winning, but this game isn't over." I remembered our 10th anniversary. Darren had promised a trip to Italy. He spoke of gondolas in Venice, of wine in Tuscany, of evenings by the Colosseum. We ended up eating takeout in front of the television. He claimed work had gotten in the way. I told myself it was fine, that love was more important than promises. But now, years later, I wondered, was that the first lie? The first quiet rehearsal for the man he would become? By now, the signs were impossible to ignore. The late-night calls. The perfume. The twitch in his eye. Celeste's probing questions about the condo papers. Candace's voice, echoing in my ear about the blonde in the jewelry store. The missing 30,000. Piece by piece, a puzzle was forming. And the picture wasn't of a marriage. It was of a plot. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my own reflection. I saw a woman with tired eyes, shoulders heavy from carrying 2.5 decades of loyalty. And I asked myself, do you collapse under the weight of betrayal? Or do you fight? My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Aisha," I said, my voice steady but low. There was a pause, then a warm, familiar voice. "Naomi? It's been ages. How are you?" "I need to see you," I whispered. "Tonight." The late afternoon sunlight slanted through downtown Washington, painting the glass towers in molten gold. Naomi sat in the back of a cab, her hands gripping a slim leather folder. Inside were copies of Darren's texts, screenshots of his late-night searches, and the crumpled business card she had found in his jacket, Mr. Hayes' Family Law. Every jolt of the cab seemed to rattle her bones. When she reached the building where Aisha's law firm was located, Naomi hesitated before stepping out. Could she really tell her old college friend everything? Would Aisha believe her? The lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive perfume. She pressed the button for the 15th floor. And as the elevator climbed, Naomi's mind slipped back 25 years. She remembered Aisha then, a sharp-eyed law student with notebooks full of color-coded tabs. They had been inseparable at Georgetown, Naomi with her accounting textbooks, Aisha with her case briefs. They pulled all-nighters in the campus library, shared vending machine coffee, and whispered about their futures. Naomi had once told Aisha about Darren. "He's ambitious," Naomi had said with that shy smile. "And a little too smooth," Aisha had warned, half joking, half serious. Back then Naomi had laughed it off. Now, as the elevator dinged and the doors opened, she realized maybe Aisha had seen something even she couldn't. Aisha's office was sleek, lined with bookshelves and framed degrees. Behind the desk sat the same friend Naomi remembered, though older now, her hair pinned neatly, her eyes still sharp with intelligence. "Naomi Sterling," Aisha said warmly, rising to hug her. "It's been too long." Naomi tried to smile but felt her face stiffen. She sank into the chair opposite. "Too long, yes. But I need your help." The lawyer and Aisha clicked into place. "Tell me everything. Don't leave a single detail out." So Naomi did. She spoke for nearly 20 minutes, her voice shaking as she laid out Darren's late-night phone calls, his mistress Sierra, Celeste's visits, the suspicious lawyer Hayes. Aisha listened in silence, only tapping her pen occasionally. When Naomi finally finished, Aisha leaned back. "Naomi," she said firmly, "your husband is trying to stage manage your downfall, but he's not as clever as he thinks." Naomi frowned. "What do you mean?" "First, assets," Aisha explained, her voice calm but precise. "That condo? You told me your parents bought it. Did they gift it to you?" "Yes," Naomi whispered. "But Darren's name was added later." Aisha's eyebrows shot up. "Then you may have a premarital claim. If we can prove the original purchase was in your name only, Darren has almost no right to it. It's your ace." Naomi's heart pounded. Ace. The word felt like oxygen. Aisha leaned forward. "Listen carefully. Between now and your anniversary you need evidence. Keep records of every conversation, screenshot his messages, log the money transfers. And whatever happens, do not let them know you know." Naomi nodded, clutching her folder tighter. But she hesitated. Should she reveal her inheritance from Aunt Josephine? Over $3 million in assets, a lifeline that Darren knew nothing about. Her instinct told her to wait. Not even Aisha could know, not yet. Instead, she asked, "What about Hayes? Darren trusts him completely." "Hayes?" Aisha scoffed. "I know his firm. Sleazy. They thrive on intimidation. But intimidation only works if you're unprepared. If you stay calm, they have nothing." Later, as Naomi left the office, the sky had darkened, and the city lights flickered on. She walked slowly, her heels clicking on the pavement, her thoughts a whirlpool. She had two truths in her pocket now. The condo had been hers first. Darren was bleeding their joint funds dry. And one truth she had not yet revealed. Her inheritance, her escape hatch, her ultimate shield. She paused under a streetlight, staring at her reflection in a darkened shop window. "You're stronger than they think," she whispered to herself. "Much stronger." And for the first time in weeks she almost believed it. But even as Naomi felt a spark of strength, Darren and Celeste were plotting the final act of betrayal. And their plan for the Watergate Hotel ballroom was far crueler than Naomi could imagine. 2 mornings after meeting Aisha, a courier rang my bell. I signed without thinking, assuming it was something from work. The envelope was heavy, stamped with a crest I recognized only faintly. When I slid it open at the kitchen counter, the smell of paper and old ink rose like a memory. Aunt Josephine. Inside were certified copies in German and English, with gold seals that shimmered in the light. A letter from the notary. A short note she had written years ago and asked them to include when the time came. For you, Naomi. For courage if you ever need it. Traced the embossed edge with my thumb. Courage. I hadn't felt that word in weeks. I had been living on calculation and breath control, on keeping my face still long enough to get through another day. But courage sounded like a door swinging open to a balcony full of sun. I placed the documents in a clear sleeve and whispered, "Thank you," into the empty kitchen as if she could hear it. Then I slid the sleeve into the leather folder with the screenshots, Hayes's business card, and a printed log of the bank withdrawals. The folder had become a small, precise war. That afternoon I stepped out for groceries and caught a glimpse of a familiar coat on the opposite sidewalk. Camel hair, clean lines, a belt cinched like a trophy. Sierra crossed with the light, earbuds in, smiling at something I couldn't hear. She stopped at a cafe and took a table by the window. I pretended to check my phone and found a spot at the far edge of the glass. She spoke into her mic in that rapid, confidential tone that belongs to people who think the world is a stage set for them. "Baby, the manager says the ballroom is perfect," she murmured. "Yes, the Watergate. High ceilings, golden light. You'll look powerful at the mic." She laughed softly. "Of course she'll sign. After what you say. She'll be too shocked not to." My breath fogged the glass in a little oval I wiped with my sleeve. If I could hear pieces through a pane in traffic, how loud had their private rehearsals become inside their heads? Sierra tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and dropped her voice further. "And the condo key, don't worry, we'll change the locks the same week. I want my books arranged by color. And the balcony, I already know where the plants go." My hand curled around the strap of my bag. My balcony. My plants. What did it cost a person to speak like that about a life she hadn't earned? I didn't go in. I didn't confront. I let the scene burn into my memory, a frame I could pluck forward to look at when doubt tried to soften me. When she stood to leave, she caught her reflection in the cafe mirror and smiled at herself, as if none of this would ever turn on her. That evening, Celeste came with a white envelope tied in a ribbon. She handed it to me like a christening. "For you, dear," she said sweetly. "Just some helpful information. It's good to be informed." Inside was a printed brochure from Hayes and Associates, Divorce, Asset Division, Spousal Strategies. A note in the neat, expensive hand I'd seen on her holiday cards. "Free consultation anytime." I looked up and smiled. Very thoughtful. Her eyes glittered. "One must prepare for all eventualities, Naomi. Life is unpredictable." I rested the brochure on the console table. "Yes," I agreed softly. "It is." She drifted toward the window, then spoke without turning. "The restaurant you and Darren chose. I hear it's an excellent choice. A celebration is only as memorable as its venue." "The Watergate," I said, watching her back. "He wanted something important." Her shoulders lifted, satisfied. "My son understands appearances. That will serve him." I almost admired the craftsmanship. She could cut you and compliment you with the same syllable. When she left, I slid the brochure into my folder. Evidence sometimes comes in monogrammed envelopes. That night I couldn't sleep. I turned on the bedside lamp and opened the small tin box where I kept things that didn't like to be left in drawers. A strand of my mother's pearls, the receipt from our courthouse signing, and a photograph of my parents standing outside the bank the day they wired the down payment. My father had refused to be in pictures, but my mother insisted. For the memory. In the photo she's squinting, smiling, one hand on her coat, the other gripping the envelope like it might blow away. "We want you to start safe," my mother had said. "A home is safety." Back then I had wanted to tell her that love is safety too. I didn't realize homes endure where promises sometimes do not. I slid the photo back and took out an older letter from the real estate attorney who closed our purchase. I had saved it like a superstition. It felt almost ridiculous to turn to paper in a world of passwords and clouds. But paper was stubborn. Paper stayed. The next morning I made an appointment with Mr. Perry, the older attorney who had overseen our condo purchase. He had an office with carpets that whispered and a secretary who remembered names without checking. "Mrs. Sterling," he said warmly, glasses halfway down his nose. "How many years it's been? Still in the M Street unit?" "Still," I said, grateful that he spoke of me and the condo as a pair. "I need to confirm something about the original title." He pulled a file from a cabinet that looked like it had learned patience from trees. Unusual, this one, he murmured. Funds wired from your parents directly to escrow. Original deed in your name alone. Husband added to title 2 months after closing. I closed my eyes for a second. The folder under my arm grew lighter. Mr. Perry, I said, could you prepare a fresh letter clarifying that sequence? He nodded. Of course. I'll note the source of funds and the timing. It matters. Everyone will be able to hear perfectly, she said. Darren nodded, pleased. That's important, he replied. I'll be giving a very special speech. I studied the exact spot where the mic would stand. I pictured air vibrating with sentences that had practiced themselves in a closed study at midnight. The thought steadied me more than it scared me. On the way out, Darren squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I'm thinking about the acoustics, I said. He laughed as if I had made a joke. Of course you are. On the walk home, cold air bit my cheeks. I felt for the first time something like a hand at the small of my back, urging me forward. Darren insisted we tour the ballroom together. You'll love it, he said, too bright. The way the chandeliers catch the stemware? It looks like starlight. We met the manager at the Watergate, a woman with kind eyes and the weary competence of someone who knows weddings and crises are cousins. She talked us through floral options, shielded lighting, and the placement of a microphone on a stand exactly center stage. That evening Candace called again, her voice lower, different. Naomi, I saw him at the jeweler again. Same woman. She was trying on a ring this time. Big. He told the clerk they'd finalize after the event. I think he meant your anniversary. I sat on the edge of the bed and traced the quilt-stitched diamonds with my finger. Thank you, I said. I'm okay. Are you? She asked softly. I have a plan. The line went quiet for a heartbeat. Then Candace exhaled. Good. Because he doesn't expect you to. Flashback. The night my mother told me the truth about love. I remembered a night long before Darren, when I had come home late from a study session and found my mother sitting with a cup of tea at the kitchen table, looking out at nothing. Shouldn't you be in bed? I teased gently. She smiled without moving her eyes. Love is a wonderful thing, she said out of nowhere. But people confuse it for something that fixes them. Doesn't. It just sits beside you while you fix yourself. I didn't know then how important that line would be. I repeated it now in the quiet and felt it land like a small sturdy step I could put my foot on. 2 days later, fate decided I had seen enough silhouettes. At the hotel lobby, while finalizing menu details with the manager, I turned and found myself face to face with Sierra. Her eyes were the pale blue of expensive swimming pools. She smiled, slow and condescending, before she knew who I was. Do you know where the manager is? I asked, voice even. No idea, she replied, tone chilly, gaze sliding over me like a critic appraising a knockoff. She lifted her phone. Some lady is asking questions. Some lady. I smiled. Thank you, I said and walked to the front desk. She was still on the call when I passed again. Baby, it's all perfect, she said, voice syrup thick. This is the night that changes everything. I almost said yes, it is, but I kept walking. Mini cliffhanger / audience hook. When a person builds themselves a stage, they rarely imagine anyone else will use the microphone. Darren and Celeste were ready for a performance. Sierra had already practiced her bow. What none of them understood was that a stage lights everything, not just the actor who thinks he's the star. And the spotlight was about to move. The week before the anniversary, Darren turned into an actor I barely recognized. He left notes on the fridge with scribbled hearts, sent me text messages with emojis he had never used in 25 years, and arrived home with small gifts, chocolates, flowers, even a silk scarf that still smelled faintly of the store where it had been wrapped. At dinner, he poured wine into my glass before I could reach for it. Naomi, my love, he said, raising his glass as if toasting an invisible audience, to the best 25 years of my life. His eyes flickered. He couldn't hold the sentence steady. I clinked his glass, watching the liquid swirl. You don't toast what you're about to burn, I thought. Out loud I smiled. To the best. He exhaled, satisfied, believing he was convincing me. 2 days later, Celeste visited unannounced again. She had a way of making our condo feel like a foyer she was simply passing through on her way to somewhere grander. Naomi, dear, she said, placing a tin of cookies on the counter. I've been speaking with Darren about the guest list. 100 people is not too many. It's a milestone after all. A grand party befits a grand occasion. I nodded, offering tea I knew she wouldn't drink. She leaned closer, lowering her voice as if the plants on the balcony might overhear. Darren deserves to be celebrated, don't you think? He's worked so hard, carried so much responsibility. Her tone made it clear. I was a decorative extension of his achievements, nothing more. Yes, I replied softly, he does deserve recognition. Her eyes glinted, hearing only the words, not the weight behind them. Then she straightened, brushing imaginary crumbs from her lapel. You've kept the condo lovely. But tell me, are you sure you have the documents organized? Titles, accounts, insurance policies? These things matter. At our age, you know. I folded my hands to keep them still. Everything is where it needs to be. She smiled, thin and satisfied. Good girl. When she left, the silence in the room felt like the aftermath of smoke. That night I stood at the bathroom mirror, touching the new lines at the corners of my eyes. They think I'm naive. They think I'm quiet because I'm weak. But silence is not weakness, it's observation. And every detail I observe is a thread I can pull when the time comes. I practiced smiling without showing teeth, the kind of smile that said I know more than I should. Then I whispered to my reflection, keep underestimating me. Flashback, the first time Darren lied. In college, Darren had once borrowed my notes for a midterm study group. Later, I found out he hadn't gone to the group at all. He'd used my notes to tutor a girl from another class. When I confronted him, he laughed, that charming laugh that had once made me forgive too much. Naomi, it's nothing. She just needed help. Don't be jealous. I had let it slide back then. A small fracture in what I believed was trust. Now, decades later, I recognize that fracture as the seed of something that had only grown sharper with time. Once a man realizes he can lie without consequence, he will lie again. The only question is when and for what. Candace called again, urgency in her voice. Naomi, listen to me. I wasn't going to say anything, but I saw Darren at the jeweler again. He wasn't just browsing. He paid for something. A ring box. A diamond, Naomi. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. Thank you for telling me. Her voice cracked. What are you going to do? I'm going to let him give it to her, I replied. And then I'm going to take back everything else. There was a pause. Then Candace whispered, You're stronger than I thought. I almost laughed. I'm stronger than I thought too. That evening, Darren left his phone on the counter when he went to shower. A notification buzzed. Sierra's name appeared in the preview, counting the hours. Can't wait to dance with you under the chandeliers. My pulse quickened, but my face stayed calm. I didn't unlock the phone. I didn't need to. Sometimes the truth doesn't need proof. It announces itself in neon. When he returned whistling, I handed him the phone. You forgot this. His eyes searched my face for any sign of suspicion. He found none. That frightened him more than anger would have. Mini cliffhanger. As he scrolled pretending to check the weather, I thought, you think you're holding the cards. But you don't even know the deck I've been shuffling behind your back. And the anniversary wasn't just going to be his stage. It was going to be mine. Aisha had me come in after hours so we wouldn't run into anyone from my world. The office was dim except for her desk lamp. A clean island of light in a sea of shadows. She locked the glass door behind me. Okay, she said, voice low and steady. We're switching from reaction to preparation. Show me what you've got since last time. I placed the leather folder on her desk and removed items one by one, screenshots of Darren's browser history, photos of the calendar reminders, a neat spreadsheet of the withdrawals with merchant names, dates, and running totals. I slid Mr. Perry's draft letter across last. Aisha skimmed, nodded, then read Mr. Perry's letter twice. Good. This is strong. Source of funds noted, original deed in your name, addition of spouse 2 months later. That temporal gap will matter. She pulled a legal pad closer. Here's the playbook for the next 7 days. Document custody. Make 2 sets of copies. One goes to a safe deposit box. One stays offsite with a friend you trust. Communications. Stop texting about this. If he confronts, keep your responses short. Let's discuss later. No admissions, no accusations. Financials. Freeze discretionary spending on the joint. Keep paying utilities to look normal. Move any new deposits to your personal account. Timeline. Write a simple chronology. First weird call, Celeste's visits, jeweler sightings, bank hits. Attach receipts and screenshots. Judges love organized stories. Witnesses. Candace will write a short dated statement about what she saw. Mr. Perry's letter gets notarized. If your boss can affirm you're stable, employed, and responsible, we add that too. Behavior. Calm, consistent, courteous. The one who stays composed tends to be believed. I wrote each line down even though I knew I wouldn't forget. Writing made it settle. Aisha softened her tone. Naomi, when people plan public humiliation, two tools work best: shame and surprise. You take both away by telling your story in facts before they try to tell theirs in theater. I looked up. What if he pushes me at the party? What if he tries to corner me into signing something? Then you say one sentence: I don't sign legal papers outside my lawyer's office. She smiled without humor. Say it like a brick. I repeated it softly until it sounded like mine. The next morning I rented a safe deposit box at a bank across town where Darren had never opened an account. A woman in a navy blazer walked me through two locked doors and into a quiet room lined with small metal rectangles, each with a number and a little keyhole like a secret. I placed the following inside: Mr. Perry's letter, copies of bank statements marked in yellow, my timeline, and Aunt Josephine's notarial packet in its clear sleeve. As the lid closed, a feeling settled on me that I had not felt since childhood, the feeling that an adult had finally come to stand in the doorway. On the way out, I bought a small notebook from the bank's lobby shelf, the kind they give away with a logo and too thin paper. I started the chronology on the train ride back, printing neatly. October 3 to 3:06 a.m., Darren whispering in hall, "We have to do this right." Female voice believed to be Celeste. She never suspects. October 4th, Celeste visit 1, asked where condo papers kept. October 5th, phone reminder, call S11 a.m. Darren explanation, Sanchez in Seattle. I twitch observed. October 6th, browser history. Searches on asset division, condo retention. October 7th, Candace call, trailed Darren at jeweler with blonde ring inspection. October 8th, joint account withdrawals totaling $30,000. Payments include law firm. Facts became bricks. Bricks became walls. Walls kept weather out. At my desk, spreadsheets open like maps I could actually read. Numbers soothed a brain that had been living on alarms. I kept moving: audit variance, vendor reconciliation, quarterly accruals. Around noon my boss, Michael, paused by my door. "You all right?" he asked. He had a face that did not prod feelings but did not look away from them either. "I will be," I said, not lying. He leaned on the doorframe. "You've handled 2 audits without a single external note. If you need mornings or afternoons next week, use them. And if anyone from," he gestured vaguely toward the world, "tries to reduce you to a headline, send them to me." People talk about support like a speech. Real support is a man who offers time on the calendar, and his name in front of yours if needed. That evening I returned home early. Through our half-closed study door I heard 2 voices. Darren's and Celeste's, low and managerial. "You must set the tone," she instructed. "Not hostility, resolve. Look dignified. Use the word honesty often. People accept cruelty if it's wrapped in that word." Darren tried the line again, voice measured. "We owe our friends honesty. Naomi and I have grown apart." "Good," she said. "Then hold the silence. Let them digest it." They were choreographing grief and calling it integrity. I backed away from the door on quiet feet. My hands wanted to shake. I placed my palms on the cool hallway wall until they remembered how to be still. In the kitchen I turned on the tap and let water run over my wrists. I whispered to the sink. Honesty isn't the absence of shame. It's the absence of deceit. Then I turned the tap off and made tea. After dinner I pulled out the little tin box again and took the smallest envelope from the bottom. One of my father's notes from years ago. He had been a quiet man who wrote more than he spoke. The note read, "Naomi, people think strength is lifting. But most strength is lowering your voice, your pulse, the temperature of a room. Lower first. Then decide." I looked at the clock. Every decision I had made in the last 2 weeks, weight, document, plan, felt like a fidelity to that line. I met Candace at a cafe 2 blocks from her office. She was already there, hair pulled back, pen in hand, a little nervous. You don't have to do this, I told her, meaning the effort, not the courage. I want to, she said, meaning both. She dated the top, wrote what she saw at the jeweler, included time and store name, then signed. I took a photo and texted it to Aisha. The reply came back quickly, perfect. Before we left, Candace squeezed my hand. I always thought you were gentle, she said. I didn't realize gentle could be a type of steel. I laughed softly. Neither did I. That night Darren came home with invitations proofs, the kind printed on thick card with gold edging. He spread them on the table like a dealer. Look at these, he said. Elegant, right? Everyone will remember this night. I'm sure they will, I answered. He studied me, searching for a tell. We're good, right? His tone was careful. It's important we show unity. Unity is easy when there's truth, I said, neutral. He smiled like a man who had just heard a foreign phrase but recognized the melody. Exactly, he said, mishearing me entirely. The next day Aisha phoned. 2 quick things, she said. First, Mr. Perry emailed the final letter airtight. Second, I pulled public records. Hayes has a reputation for pushing ambiguous waiver documents at events. He'll try to make it seem like a guest book or a gift receipt. If anything is put in front of you, do not touch it. I won't, I said. I know the sentence. I repeated it aloud. I don't sign legal papers outside my lawyer's office. Good, she replied. Lastly, if there's a mic, you decide if you use it. If you speak, do it with 3 facts and 1 sentence of feeling. Audiences can follow that ratio. I wrote 3 facts plus 1 feeling at the top of my notebook and underlined it twice. On my way to the metro, I paused outside the Watergate again, drawn like a swimmer to a familiar shoreline. Through the lobby glass I saw Sierra with the manager, tapping her phone while the other woman showed her a seating map. It's crucial he's in the center, Sierra said. Spotlight here. And I'll be near the back for the surprise. For the what? The manager asked. Sierra smiled. He's introducing me to colleagues, new assistant. She rolled the words in her mouth like candy. We want it to feel natural. The manager nodded politely, customer service neutral. New assistant. It was almost funny, the euphemism. I filed the phrase in my mental cabinet under things that will age badly. Back at home, Darren's phone lit up on the table while he stepped into the shower. Sierra. The preview read. Dee told Mom the plan. She's thrilled. After you speak, I'll come up. The rest cut off. I turned the phone over face down, exactly as he always left it. I didn't need to see more. Knowing is a form of fullness. Sometimes adding detail only spills it. When he came out, he saw the phone where he'd left it and relaxed. It's odd how trust survived in him even as he starved it in me. He stood at the mirror adjusting his tie despite already wearing a t-shirt. He liked to practice adjustments. Big weekend, he said to his reflection. Everything changes. Yes, I said from the doorway. It does. That night, when the apartment was finally still, I sat at the dining table and placed 4 sheets of paper in a square. Mr. Perry's letter, Fact 1, condo origin and timing. Bank statement summary. Fact 2, $30,000 withdrawals with recipients. Witness statement, Fact 3, jeweler sightings and dates. My 1-sentence feeling, handwritten. A marriage is not theater, and I will not be your prop. I read them aloud in order slowly, until the rhythm settled into muscle memory. Then I placed them back in the folder and breathed. Mini cliffhanger. Across town I imagined Hayes polishing his fountain pen, Celeste laying out a suit with a mother's careful pride, Sierra practicing a smile in the mirror that said I belong. I could almost hear Darren's whisper as he drifted to sleep. Honesty. He would dream of applause. They had rehearsed everything but the sound of a woman who knows where the documents are. The day before. The morning before our silver anniversary, Darren hummed while shaving. He never hummed. The tune was off-key, wandering. He adjusted his tie even though he wasn't leaving for hours. His reflection in the mirror looked like a man rehearsing victory. You look radiant, he said suddenly, glancing at me in the doorway. Tomorrow will be unforgettable. His smile was wide enough to be painful. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Unforgettable, yes. He returned to his tie, satisfied with an answer he didn't understand. Celeste's final coaching. That afternoon Celeste came by again, draped in pearls, eyes alight. She carried a garment bag that smelled faintly of mothballs and lavender. "This was your father-in-law's suit," she said, unzipping it to reveal a perfectly pressed gray wool ensemble. "Darren should wear it tomorrow. Dignity matters." Darren nodded obediently, trying it on. Celeste smoothed the shoulders like an artist perfecting clay. "You'll stand tall, speak calmly, and everyone will admire your courage," she instructed. "Remember, pause after you say honesty. Pauses make people trust you." I watched the rehearsal. It was grotesque and precise, like a family staging an opera about betrayal. Celeste turned to me with that knife-blade smile. "And Naomi, wear something flattering. You deserve to look your best, for your last night as his wife." My heart skipped, but my face didn't. I simply nodded, a statue dressed in calm. Flashback, the honeymoon promise. That night, as Darren fell asleep early, I lay awake remembering our honeymoon in Florence. We had eaten gelato on the steps of the Duomo, laughter spilling like wine. "Promise me," he'd whispered then, "that we'll never betray each other. No secrets." The cobblestones, the moon, the gelato all had conspired to make me believe. But promises are easy in youth. It's keeping them in middle age that proves whether they were ever real. Naomi's quiet ritual. I rose before dawn the next morning. The condo was silent, the city outside hushed under October fog. I brewed tea, laid out my documents, and read them again: Mr. Perry's letter, Candace's statement, bank withdrawals, inheritance papers. Each sheet of paper felt heavier than steel. Paper was my armor. I whispered the line Aisha had drilled into me: "I don't sign legal papers outside my lawyer's office." I repeated it until the syllables felt like prayer beads. Then I rehearsed my ratio: 3 facts plus 1 feeling. Fact 1, condo was gifted before marriage. Fact 2, Darren spent $30,000 of joint money on lies. Fact 3, witness saw him with mistress at jeweler. Feeling, a marriage is not theater, and I refuse to be anyone's prop. Watergate walkthrough. Later that day, Darren insisted we check the final arrangements at the Watergate ballroom. The chandeliers shimmered like frozen fire. The tables were dressed in white roses and gold-rimmed china. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Darren said, spreading his arms. "A night for history." The manager showed us the microphone stand in the center of the room. Darren tested it, speaking into the empty space. "Dear friends," his voice echoed, bouncing off chandeliers. He smiled, imagining applause. I stood at the back, watching him rehearse humiliation in a hall built for celebration. Inside, my hands curled into fists. Outside, they stayed loose at my sides. The manager turned to me. "And you, Mrs. Sterling, do you want to test the mic?" I stepped forward, touched the cool steel, and spoke softly, "Testing 1, 2. The sound filled the ballroom, wrapping around Darren. He looked at me sharply, uneasy for the first time. I smiled, released the mic, and stepped back. "Works perfectly." The final call. That evening, as Darren paced in the living room with note cards, his phone rang. He grabbed it quickly, but not quickly enough. I saw the name flash. "Hayes." He ducked into the study, closed the door, and spoke in hushed tones. I caught pieces. "Papers ready tomorrow, she won't refuse." Then a pause. His voice dropped lower. "If she resists, we'll handle it. Publicly." I sat on the sofa, folder on my lap, and whispered to myself, "Yes, we'll handle it publicly." Mini cliffhanger. That night, I slept with the folder on my nightstand like a weapon within reach. Darren dreamed of applause. Celeste dreamed of triumph. Sierra dreamed of conquest. But dreams have a way of unraveling when the lights come on. And tomorrow the lights would be blinding. The morning before our silver anniversary, Darren hummed while shaving. He never hummed. The tune was off-key, wandering. He adjusted his tie even though he wasn't leaving for hours. His reflection in the mirror looked like a man rehearsing victory. "You look radiant," he said suddenly, glancing at me in the doorway. "Tomorrow will be unforgettable." His smile was wide enough to be painful. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Unforgettable, yes." He returned to his tie, satisfied with an answer he didn't understand. That afternoon, Celeste came by again, draped in pearls, eyes alight. She carried a garment bag that smelled faintly of mothballs and lavender. "This was your father-in-law's suit," she said, unzipping it to reveal a perfectly pressed gray wool ensemble. "Darren should wear it tomorrow. Dignity matters." Darren nodded obediently, trying it on. Celeste smoothed the shoulders like an artist perfecting clay. You'll stand tall, speak calmly, and everyone will admire your courage, she instructed. Remember, pause after you say honesty. Pauses make people trust you. I watched the rehearsal. It was grotesque and precise, like a family staging an opera about betrayal. Celeste turned to me with that knife-blade smile. And Naomi wore something flattering. You deserve to look your best. For your last night as his wife. My heart skipped, but my face didn't. I simply nodded, a statue dressed in calm. That night, as Darren fell asleep early, I lay awake remembering our honeymoon in Florence. We had eaten gelato on the steps of the Duomo, laughter spilling like wine. Promise me, he'd whispered then, that we'll never betray each other. No secrets. The cobblestones, the moon, the gelato all had conspired to make me believe. But promises are easy in youth. It's keeping them in middle age that proves whether they were ever real. I stood at the back, watching him rehearse humiliation in a hall built for celebration. Inside, my hands curled into fists. Outside, they stayed loose at my sides. The manager turned to me. And you, Mrs. Sterling, do you want to test the mic? I stepped forward, touched the cool steel, and spoke softly. Testing 1, 2. The sound filled the ballroom, wrapping around Darren. He looked at me sharply, uneasy for the first time. I smiled, released the mic, and stepped back. Works perfectly. That evening, as Darren paced in the living room with note cards, his phone rang. He grabbed it quickly, but not quickly enough. I saw the name flash. Hayes. He ducked into the study, closed the door, and spoke in hushed tones. I caught pieces. Papers ready tomorrow, she won't refuse. Then a pause. His voice dropped lower. If she resists, we'll handle it. Publicly. I sat on the sofa, folder on my lap, and whispered to myself, yes, we'll handle it publicly. Mini cliffhanger. That night, I slept with the folder on my nightstand like a weapon within reach. Darren dreamed of applause. Celeste dreamed of triumph. Sierra dreamed of conquest. Good optics. He spoke about our marriage like a product launch. He took a sip and watched my face for weather. You okay? I'm steady, I said. His eyes narrowed a fraction. Steady isn't the word a man expects from a woman he plans to topple. Around noon, a courier arrived with a garment bag. Darren lifted it like a prize. For you, he said. Try it on. Inside was a dress, dark blue silk, tasteful, expensive, chosen by someone who knew my size but not my soul. I held it up by the straps. It's beautiful, I said. He exhaled, relieved. Wear it tonight. It suits the moment. I thought, you want to dress me for my own execution. Out loud, I'll wear it. He raised his brows, pleased. Perfect. An hour later, Celeste let herself in. Perfume arrived a second before she did. She kissed the air near my cheek and handed me a small velvet box. A little sparkle, she said. For tonight. Inside lay earrings, diamond drops that caught every light in the room and returned them colder. They're beautiful, I conceded. She tilted her head. A woman should look her best on a night people will remember. Our eyes held. Over her shoulder I could see the velvet box mirrored in the oven door. Like a door inside a door. I closed it gently. Darren is ready, she went on, lowering her voice to a confidential thread. He's rehearsed. He knows exactly what to say and when. He'll be dignified. People respect dignified. I'm sure they will, I said evenly. She smiled, satisfied, and adjusted a non-existent speck on my sleeve, the way mothers do to daughters they actually love. Then she turned to Darren. Stand straight, she instructed. Don't rush. After you say honesty, pause. Look at the room. Let silence work for you. Silence works for the person who owns it. I made a note. I would own mine. While Celeste inspected the boutonniere pins, Darren's phone buzzed on the counter. Sierra at the salon. Hair perfect. Save me a seat where I can see your face when you say it. New assistant has to take notes. I turned the phone over so the screen faced the marble. I didn't need to read the rest. Celeste's gaze flicked to my hand and back again, calculating. The smallest acknowledgement can be a confession. The smallest non-reaction, a fortress. Ready. Celeste chirped. Cars downstairs in an hour. Ready, Darren and I said at the same time, voices harmonizing out of habit, not truth. In the quiet before we left, I stood in the doorway of the room that should have been a nursery once. We had kept it as a study, but sometimes when the light struck at 4 p.m., the walls looked softer, like they were waiting. There had been a year when we thought almost. A heartbeat on a screen, a grain of hope blooming. We had bought a blanket with small yellow ducks. After the appointment where the heartbeat was gone, Darren drove home in silence, and I folded the blanket back into the drawer. That night he went out with colleagues. He came home smelling like a bar and said, "We'll try again," but the way he said it sounded like, "I'll try to forget." We never spoke about the blanket again. I closed the study door gently now, as if the room could wake. My phone vibrated. "Aisha, you good?" she asked first. "I'm steady," I repeated. Remember facts, then feeling. If you choose to speak, you stop after the sentence. Don't let him bait you into a duel. Leave the room to clap for you. And if Hayes tries something, you already know. Her tone went dry. Tell him to enjoy the hors d'oeuvres. I smiled. "Will do, Naomi," she added, voice softening. "Whatever happens tonight, your life does not begin or end there. The mic is a tool, not a fate." "I know. And text me when you're home." "I will." We rode down in the elevator with Darren's arm draped around my shoulders like a provisional flag. In the lobby, the doorman smiled. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Price." "Thank you," we chimed again, reflex a better actor than both of us. In the car, Darren scrolled his phone, rechecking. Celeste sat primly, smoothing her skirt. I watched the city pass, the river steel gray, joggers committed to their own rituals, a woman walking a small dog in a sweater the color of tangerines. I practiced breathing in fours. In through the nose, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2. Out 1, 2, 3, 4. There are different ways to win. One is to need less air than the person trying to take it from you. We arrived early to check last-minute things. Staff moved like a ballet, placing, polishing, adjusting, the quiet competence of people who make other people's big moments look effortless. The manager greeted us with that same kind smile. "Everything's almost set. The musicians are warming up. The mic is center stage." "For whom?" I asked softly. He blinked, thrown. "For both of us," he lied. I fastened the second earring. "Then you should go first," I said. He smiled, relieved, not hearing the shape of what I meant. My phone buzzed on the vanity. "Candace here. I've got eyes on the back of the room. Text if you need me." Followed by a heart not in a color, but in the exact tone of a friend who stays. I typed, "Thank you. 3 facts plus 1 feeling." She replied, "Make it a clean cut." Another message from an unsaved number, "Michael here. Proud of you already. Your job is your job. The rest is noise. My boss doesn't speak often. He doesn't have to." I put the phone face down. The mirror held my gaze like a promise I had made to myself. On the way to the ballroom doors, a waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes. I took one, then remembered. Aisha had told me to avoid alcohol until after I spoke. I gave it back with a smile, and the waiter smiled back, complicit in a different kind of toast. I placed my hand on the ballroom handle. The sound on the other side swelled, voices, a violin phrase, the soft thud of shoes across carpet. Darren stood beside me, inhaled like a runner at the line, and gave me a look that he must have practiced in mirrors, pity on the surface, triumph underneath. "Ready?" he asked. I thought of the study door that should have belonged to a child. Of my mother's line about love sitting beside you while you fix yourself. Of my father's note about lowering the temperature first. I smiled, a real one this time. "Let's be honest," I said. He missed the humor and nodded. The MC cleared his throat into the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" We stepped through the doors into light. Some betrayals end in darkness. Ours preferred a chandelier. And the first person to reach for the mic was not the person they expected. The ballroom glowed like a promise. Crystal caught light and turned it into something you could almost drink. White roses sat in low bowls. Gold cutlery lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. The quartet slid through a familiar melody that made even the air seem polite. People arrived in waves. Co-workers first, then neighbors, then the friends who always enter laughing because that's how they've survived this city. Hugs. Air kisses. "You look stunning. 25 years, congratulations. What's the secret?" Laughter at the question everyone asks and no one really answers. I shook hands, smiled, Let them see the dress Darren chose and the earrings Celeste supplied and the calm I selected for myself. Candace lifted her glass to me from the back, a small salute, eyes alert. Michael, my boss, nodded once from near the side aisle, a presence that read like a boundary line. Sierra slipped in late, a cool ribbon of perfume trailing behind. Pale dress, hair set like a magazine cover. She placed herself near the back, the line of sight perfect to the center where the mic waited. She was not hiding. She was curating. Celeste made circuits like a satellite, collecting compliments, redirecting small talk, dropping hints in the casual register only she could produce. Yes, such a milestone. Darren will say a few words. He's always valued honesty. The word rang each time like a bell someone had polished too hard. The master of ceremonies, hired voice, velvet tone, stepped to center and lifted the room without raising the decibels. Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you to take your seats? We are gathered to celebrate a beautiful union, 25 years of shared life. Applause rolled, warm and uncomplicated. Glasses chimed. Chairs whispered against carpet. Please welcome, the MC continued, Mr. Darren Price, who would like to say a few words in honor of his wife. Darren stood, buttoned the gray wool jacket Celeste had chosen, and set his jaw like a man posing for a portrait he plans to hang in a hallway. He walked to the mic, note cards in hand, then set the cards on the stand as if to prove he didn't need them. He looked at me first. Not lovingly, not even kindly. Assessing, as he always does when he's about to sell something. Friends, he began, voice smooth, strong in the space, thank you for coming to celebrate 25 years of my marriage to Naomi. Another ripple of applause. He let it die. He lifted his shoulders slightly, then set them down, a cue he'd practiced. 25 years is no small thing, he continued. It's a quarter of a century of mornings and nights, of holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. I'm grateful for those years. I truly am. He paused. The kind of pause Celeste had prescribed. Yes, they had rehearsed this silence too. But I've always believed, he went on, lowering his voice a fraction so people leaned in, that what we owe each other most is honesty. Heads nodded. The word works. It always does. And honesty, he said, eyes moving across the tables, sometimes means saying what's hard to hear. Sometimes it means admitting that the people we were at 25 are not the people we are at 53. Sometimes it means facing the truth that we have grown in different directions. A glass tapped the edge of a plate somewhere. Fork stilled. Naomi. He turned toward me, softening the syllables of my name like he owned them. You have been my companion for 25 years. We've had good moments and difficult ones, and I respect the life we built. But I also know that life is short. That clinging to a version of ourselves that no longer exists is not kindness. It's fear. He exhaled, letting the words arrange themselves into something that felt like philosophy. So tonight, he said, and here his eyes flicked just once to the back of the room where Sierra stood with her perfect posture and her perfect anticipation. In front of the people who matter to us, I want to say that I am choosing a new chapter. The room did not breathe. I am filing for divorce, he said plainly. I believe it's the right thing for both of us. I believe we deserve the truth, and we deserve the chance to find the lives that fit who we are now. A sound moved through the tables, half gasp, half whisper. The quartet's cellist set his bow down without meaning to. And because honesty includes practicalities, he pressed on, shifting to the register he uses in meetings when budget lines become scalpels, Naomi will need to vacate the condo. The time has come for us to separate our lives in a way that's fair and civilized. He left the word fair hanging like mist. He spoke the next line carefully, almost kindly. We'll divide what the law dictates. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to state the truth. From the back, Sierra's mouth tilted in approval. Celeste, at a side table, lifted her chin by a precise degree, admiring the echo of her coaching. Darren smiled in a way that told the room he thought he'd landed it. He spread his hands, palms open, the gesture of a man offering peace after he's taken the hill. Thank you, he finished, for celebrating our years, and for respecting our decision to move forward with dignity. He stepped back from the mic. Silence tried to hold. Failed. What did he just say? A neighbor whispered too loudly. This can't be real, another murmured. At my company's table, someone hissed. At her own anniversary? Michael stood without standing. His posture alone became a refusal. Candace's eyes found mine. Now they said. The manager glanced toward the tech, hand hovering over the volume slider as if sound could fix this. Darren gave a small nod as if to dismiss the room's shock, then already began scanning for the next beat. Hayes with papers at the back, Sierra ready to glide forward as assistant, Celeste coiling to comfort him publicly while slicing me privately. He turned from the mic, prepared to walk back to his seat and let the narrative harden like cooling glass. I stood. Chairs creaked softly as heads turned. The MC frowned toward the schedule printed in his pocket. This was not on it. I walked to the center with the calm of a person approaching a familiar desk. No rush. No theatrics. I placed my folder on the stand beside the note cards Darren had abandoned. Up close, the mic looked exactly as it had in rehearsal. Harmless, almost friendly. The fear some people feel for microphones is only the fear of hearing their own voice fill a room. I wasn't afraid of mine. I looked at the audience first. Faces open, confused, some angry, some hungry for anything that might make this make sense. Then at Darren. The triumph in his eyes flickered, recalibrating. I didn't look at Celeste. I didn't need to. I could feel her watching me the way a cat watches a glass at the edge of a table. I leaned in. The mic picked up the breath before the words. The room leaned with it. Friends, I said, and the words sounded unlike his version, warmer, steadier, real. Thank you for being here. I'm going to keep this simple. I opened the folder and laid out the pages I had rehearsed, corner to corner like a map. 3 facts, I said, and 1 feeling. The room stilled in that particular way a room does when it realizes it may be about to learn something it wasn't supposed to. I lifted the first page. Fact 1. Mini cliffhanger. At the back, a man in a dark suit Hayes took a step toward the aisle then stopped. Sierra's smile thinned. Celeste's fingers tightened on her champagne stem. Darren's throat moved. Fact 1, I repeated, meeting the room's eye. And then I told them. I lifted the first page and let the room see the letterhead before I spoke. The logo, the date, the signature. People trust paper that looks like it did not come from a home printer. Fact 1, I said. This condo, the one Darren has asked me to vacate, was paid for by my parents before our marriage. Funds wired directly to escrow in my name. The deed recorded with me as the sole owner. Darren's name was added 2 months later as my husband. I have a fresh letter from the closing attorney confirming the sequence. I placed Mr. Perry's letter on the stand and slid it slightly forward so the first row could read the header. A murmur started at one table and spread like dye through water. A man near the back said, without meaning to, "Oh." I lifted the second page. Fact 2, I continued. Over the past weeks, Darren withdrew $30,000 from our joint account in multiple transactions. The recipients include a law firm and several jewelry purchases, along with hotel charges we did not share. Dates and merchants highlighted here. I set the printouts down next to the letter. A few guests craned their necks. Numbers are not everyone's first language, but outrage translates. I lifted the third page. Fact 3, I said, voice still even. A witness, my friend, saw Darren at a jeweler with a young woman he plans to introduce to you as his assistant. She wrote a dated statement naming the store, the day, and what she saw. I have it here. I placed Candace's signed statement beside the others, edges squared. Then I looked up and found Darren's eyes. He tried to swallow quietly. He failed. I didn't make them wait long. Feelings must be a sentence, not a speech, or else they dilute. And my one feeling, I said, letting the sentence stand alone before I gave it words, is this: a marriage is not theater, and I refuse to be anyone's prop. Silence held different now, charged, not stunned. The kind of quiet a room chooses. I closed the folder, but I didn't move it. Let them see. Facts can rest without retreating. Someone at the neighbor's table breathed. Good for her. Another, older, brittle, whispered, disgraceful. And no one could tell whom she meant. Michael, my boss, lifted a hand a fraction. The gesture wasn't applause. It was permission for the room to think. Candace's shoulders relaxed. Her eyes were wet in a way that said, don't look at me or I will cry for real. Darren stepped forward a half step. Hands out, palms working the air. That corporate move he uses when a slide has gone wrong. Naomi, he said, trying to add warmth at the last second. No one wants a scene. We can. I turned the mic away from my mouth, not to silence myself but to lower the temperature of my answer. I'm not making a scene, I replied. You are. I'm making a record. The line landed like a soft gavel. Several people exhaled at once. Friends, Darren pivoted to the room. You're hearing only one side. Correct, I said, still calm. My side. You presented yours first. He blinked. A muscle in his jaw jumped. His eye twitched. At the back, the man in the dark suit, Hayes, slipped along the wall with a leather portfolio. He was aiming for the side aisle, intending to appear near me with something to sign the way a magician appears with flowers. Michael stepped into the aisle without stepping into it, just enough that Hayes would have to brush past him. Hayes hesitated, calculated, then adjusted course, only to find the manager suddenly discussing fire exits in his path. Politeness can be a barricade when coordinated by professionals. Ma'am, Hayes called softly toward me, trying to sound like a hotel concierge. Perhaps we could step into the... No, I said, voice clear without the mic. I don't sign legal papers outside my lawyer's office. Aisha's sentence sat between us like a brick wall with a welcome mat. A waiter, bless him, paused with a tray and offered Hayes a flute of sparkling water as if to acknowledge he had arrived only to hydrate. From the back, Sierra made the mistake everyone makes when they think they're already installed in someone else's life. She smiled. It slipped out before she could manage it. Small. Quick. Real. Someone saw. Then another. Eyes turned. The smile tried to sprint back into her face and hide. Too late. A woman 2 tables over said clearly, "Is that the assistant?" Sierra straightened her posture until it looked like scaffolding. "I'm here in a professional capacity," she said. Her voice was calm but pitched for microphones that weren't pointed at her. "Professional," someone repeated, and the word cracked in the middle like ice. A small wave of laughter, the unkind kind, rolled and died. Sierra's cheeks colored a shade that did not match her dress. Celeste stood, lifting her glass, a general who has seen battles and knows timing. "Friends," she announced in her social voice, "let's not." "Mrs. Price," I said, still at the mic but softer now, and she paused because she had not heard me use that name for her in a decade. "Did you send me a brochure for Hayes and Associates this week?" With a note about a free consultation. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I simply prepared me," I finished gently. "Thank you." I added it to my folder. 3 people at her table turned to look at her hands. They were steady, but her champagne tilted just enough to betray gravity. Michael raised his voice only enough to carry to our company's table. "Naomi," he said, clear, not performative, "you did well to speak clearly. If anyone from the office asks about tonight, they'll be told you handled yourself with professionalism." He didn't look at Darren when he said it. That was the point. With every line, the room shifted, away from Darren's narrative toward something else. Curiosity hardened into opinion. The opinion learned a shape. This was wrong. Darren sensed the tilt and tried a last pivot. "Naomi," he said, lowering his voice to a plea he didn't feel, "we can discuss details at home. There's no need to embarrass." "Which part embarrasses you?" I asked, still spare with syllables. "The facts? Or that I know them?" A few guests murmured, that low unanimous sound humans make when the knife goes in clean. I looked at the mic, at the pages, at the people who had come for cake and were given a courtroom. I could have kept going. There were more prints in the folder, and beneath those heavier papers with seals that would have turned the night into something else entirely. But restraint is also a kind of power. So I gave the room one last line to file. "Darren, I won't be vacating my condo. As for next steps, your lawyer can contact mine. Tonight, I suggest we enjoy the music and let the facts breathe." I stepped back from the mic. The quartet, as if hearing a cue no one had spoken, found the thread of a waltz and began to play softly, like a room remembering how to be a ballroom. For a moment no one moved. Then sound returned in layers, chairs, whispers, a cough, the scrape of a fork. Candace's hand lifted and pressed to her chest. The manager exhaled as if she'd been holding her breath for the entire hotel. Darren stayed where he was, between the mic and the aisle, counting paths with his eyes and finding none he liked. Celeste's smile reduced itself to showroom size. Hayes adjusted his cufflinks, then remembered no one was looking at his cufflinks. Sierra reached for her clutch with the grace of someone who has practiced losing beautifully. I walked back to my seat. A voice rose from the left. Aunt Clarice, my mother's sister, small and formidable in a dress the color of dark cherries. She lifted her glass. To Naomi, she said, for telling the truth without shouting. People looked at one another, then lifted their glasses too. A sound like rain on a tin roof, glasses touching, swept the room. Darren's note cards sat on the stand where he had left them, suddenly very white. At the back, Hayes slipped toward the exit. Sierra hesitated, then followed. Celeste scanned for an ally and found only faces, human, imperfect, thinking for themselves. Darren reached for the mic again. Friends, he began. He should have left it there. Friends, Darren tried again, fingers whitening on the mic stand. Clearly there's confusion. Naomi has presented a very selective. Aunt Clarice said from her seat, not loudly, just knife clean. She brought papers. You brought adjectives. Soft laughter broke, quick, mean, honest. Darren flushed. He looked for Celeste. She stood half-turned, a hand at her throat, weighing whether to intervene or conserve what remained of her social capital. She chose distance. Darren tried the sympathy card. I never wanted to hurt Naomi, but we can't pretend. Candace stood just enough to be seen. You staged this at her own anniversary. A low chorus of moved across 3 tables. From the rear, Sierra stepped forward, clutched tight in both hands. Can everyone calm down? She said brightly, voice pitched to sound reasonable and landing as patronizing. This is between 2 mature adults who have made a decision. Which one are you? Someone asked. Sierra's smile wobbled. She glanced at Darren, then back at the room. I'm Darren's assistant. New assistant. She put a polish of professionalism on the last 2 words like lip gloss. A neighbor leaned to her friend and said too audibly, Does HR know? And the friend snorted into her napkin. Sierra's eyes flashed. You know what? I don't owe any of you an explanation. I'm not the one who spent 3 months promising a downtown condo and our life by New Year's financed with. She stopped, realizing too late that her mouth had leapt the fence. The room froze, scenting blood. Financed with what? Michael asked evenly, hands at his sides. Sierra blinked, recalculated, then tossed the truth like a lit match. With her money at first, she said, chin jutting toward me. And then loans in your name, she fired at Darren, because cash flow is temporary. What loans? Celeste croaked, color draining from her face. Sierra shrugged, me now that she had company. 20,000 at Chase, 15 at Wells, and some quick thing for 8 he said he could flip. You told me, D. Don't act brand new. Gasps threaded the room. Even the quartet stopped pretending to tune. Darren turned on Sierra, voice low and sharp. What are you doing? Watching you drown, she snapped, the assistant mask slipping clean off. You promised me diamonds and a view of the river. You promised me you'd have the condo by Christmas. You promised. I promised. He laughed once, brittle. You and my mother engineered half of. Don't you dare, Celeste hissed, finally breaking character. Do not put this on me. She faced the room, voice climbing an octave it hadn't visited in years. I only wanted what's proper. Better to end things with dignity than live a lie. And a public ambush is dignity? Aunt Clarice asked. Mercy is dignity. Paperwork can be private. Celeste's mouth opened and closed. She reached for flutes that were not there and found only the stem of her own. Mrs. Price, the manager said gently, stepping just close enough. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable sitting. Celeste sat. It looked like she had never practiced that part. 2 tables over, a young cousin raised her phone, then lowered it, uncertain. Another guest didn't hesitate. Red dots blinked. Someone whispered, Silver anniversary truth. Another, no silver anniversary trader. The syllables rolled around the room like coins dropped on marble. Darren saw the screens and his face went a color I had never seen. Not anger. Not fear. Recognition. He had imagined applause. He had not accounted for a network. Please, he said to the room too late. No recording. This is private. Sierra laughed, a sound like glass under tires. You humiliate your wife in public and now you want privacy? That's adorable. Michael stepped forward one measured pace, not dramatic, just definitive. For the avoidance of doubt, he said, using the phrase that precedes policy, what I've witnessed is a planned public ambush at an employee's event. Our company will not be complicit in that. Naomi, take the week you need. We'll handle your workload. He turned his head fractionally toward Darren without granting him the courtesy of eye contact. And we'll discuss your conduct at work on Monday. In writing. Darren's jaw flexed. Michael, don't. I'm not discussing it now, Michael cut, still calm. I'm stating it. Several colleagues nodded. A woman from HR who had been trying to become a chair raised her eyebrows as if to say, well, that simplifies Monday. At the back, Hayes assessed the trajectory with a professional's eye and slid toward the exit like a shadow looking for its owner. The manager, who caught everything, intercepted. Leaving so soon? She asked pleasantly. Wait, Darren said, stepping down from the mic platform, hand catching air where her wrist had been. We can. You can nothing, she snapped, not looking back. Call me when you own anything. The door swung behind her, and the sound of it was almost kind. Celeste rose on unsteady feet. Son, she whispered, we should go. We can speak with Hayes. He left. Someone offered helpfully. Celeste's eyes fluttered. For a second, the mask slipped completely and I saw the woman underneath, the one who had planned and pushed and polished because she believed if the narrative were perfect, the world would obey it. Naomi, she said, turning to me with a grace I hadn't expected, I did not mean for you to be hurt like this. You did, I replied, not cruel, just accurate. But I'm not. She nodded once, small. It looked like the first true thing she had done all night. Everyone, Darren said, voice rising, this is a misunderstanding escalated by bitterness. He gestured vaguely in my direction, then caught himself. We should focus on the positive. 25 years. Good memories. Let's celebrate. He tried to smile. It hung there unwelcome. Candace lifted her glass and spoke with perfect politeness. To 25 years, she said, then added, and to the truth finding its way to a microphone. 3 tables clinked. 2 did not. 1 left. I stood, touched the back of my chair lightly, and looked at the manager. Thank you for your care tonight. She dipped her head. If you need a separate exit, there is one through the service corridor. I'll use the front, I said. I wanted the light. I turned to Michael. I'll email you in the morning. Don't, he replied. Monday. Candace reached me first, squeezed my hand. No words. The best kind of goodbye is the kind that assumes a hello tomorrow. At the door, I paused and looked back, not at Darren, not at Celeste, but at the room itself, the chandeliers, the tables, the 100 small objects that had been arranged to make a moment. Moments are stubborn. They insist on becoming themselves. Good night, I said to the air, and stepped into the cooler Kinder hallway. The hotel's glass doors gave me back a quieter city. I felt the night flatten against my skin. Somewhere down the block a saxophone phrased a question and left it unanswered. A cab slowed. I lifted my hand. As I slid into the back seat, the driver glanced at me in the mirror. He had the face of a man who'd seen nights go wrong and mornings arrive anyway. Where to? Home, I said, and the word felt correct again. We pulled away. My phone buzzed. Aisha. Saw clips. Impeccable. Court will be the easy part. Another from an unknown number. I'm sorry. I didn't need to open it to know whose apology had arrived 12 years too late. I rested my head against the seat. The city lights braided themselves into something almost merciful. Inside, the quartet tried to salvage a song. Guests collected coats and opinions. Celeste's posture finally surrendered to a chair. Darren stood alone at the mic, staring at his note cards as if they might now tell a different story if he shuffled them long enough. A young cousin raised her phone one last time. Caption, she whispered to her friend. Her friend considered. How about, when you plan a speech and forget she has a voice? They laughed the guilty laugh of people who will still sleep tonight. By morning the videos would spread first to group chats, then to feeds, then to strangers who would add their own angles and names. By afternoon the calls would begin. By evening there would be paperwork for something other than a party. But that was all still ahead. For now the cab turned onto M Street, toward a condo that had always been mine, and I unlocked the door with the steadiness of someone who just remembered the pin to her own life. Tomorrow court would be a room with rules. And I had paper. The ballroom emptied slowly, like a theater after a play that went wrong. Guests avoided Darren's eyes, whispered in huddles, shook their heads. The waitstaff stacked untouched desserts in silence. Celeste sat rigid, pearls crooked, mascara beginning to pool. Darren paced like a caged animal, his voice bouncing from anger to pleading. It wasn't supposed to. She twisted. Sierra betrayed me. No one understands. But no one was left to listen. At 1 a.m. back at the condo, he knocked on my door. I didn't open. His voice muffled begged, "We can talk, Naomi. Please. We can fix this. I love you, love." He used the word like a key that no longer fit the lock. I slipped my documents deeper into the safe and turned off the light. At 2:17 a.m., Sierra posted to her followers, "Imagine being promised a condo, jewelry, a life, only to find out your man mortgaged his mom's house and lied to everyone. Lesson: don't date boys who play Monopoly with real people's lives. Never again, silver anniversary trader." By morning, the screenshots had gone everywhere. At 7 a.m., Celeste called my landline. Her voice was raw, stripped of polish. "Naomi, please. Convince Darren to settle privately. No court. The videos are everywhere. People are calling my house. The church, the neighbors, they know." "Celeste," I replied, calm but firm, "you orchestrated this. You wanted public theater. Now you have it." She exhaled, a sound halfway between sob and sigh. "He's still my son. And I'm still myself," I said, and set the receiver down. 2 weeks later, we sat in family court. The fluorescent lights hummed. The walls were beige. Beige, the color of bureaucracy, the color of endings. The judge, an older woman with rimless glasses, shuffled files with brisk precision. "Case of Sterling versus Price," she announced. Darren looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. His suit was cheap, borrowed maybe. His once perfect hair had surrendered streaks of gray. He clutched papers, but his hands shook too visibly to hide. I sat beside Aisha, my attorney, steady as stone. Aisha began. "Your Honor, Exhibit A, deed of gift, 2005. Condo transferred solely to my client, Naomi Sterling, before Mr. Price's name was ever added. Legally, it is premarital property." The judge nodded, flipping pages. "Acknowledged." Darren's lawyer, a young public defender, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, while technically true, Mr. Price contributed significantly to maintaining the property." "Significantly?" the judge interrupted. "Receipts? Renovations? Proof?" The lawyer glanced at Darren. Darren muttered, I painted the guest room once." A ripple of muffled laughter spread through the gallery. The judge's eyebrows rose. "Noted." "Next, Aisha, Exhibit B, joint bank records. $30,000 withdrawn within a single month, coinciding with jewelry purchases, hotel bills, and payments to the firm of Hayes and Associates. Funds were not used for family welfare, but to support an extramarital relationship." The judge's lips tightened. She looked at Darren. "Is this accurate?" "I was under stress," he blurted. "I needed comfort." "Comfort is not a legal expense," the judge replied. Finally, Aisha presented Exhibit C, loan documents. Chase Bank, $20,000. Wells Fargo, $15,000. Quick Loan Incorporated, $8,000. All signed solely by Mr. Price, without my client's knowledge. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Price, do you contest these loans?" Darren stammered. They were temporary. Investments." The judge's gavel struck once, sharp. "Investments in infidelity, according to testimony." The gallery chuckled darkly. Darren's ears went crimson. After 3 hours of arguments and documents, the judge summarized. "Condo on M Street, sole property of Naomi Sterling. Weekend cabin, to be divided equally. Vehicle, divided equally. Loans totaling $43,000, Darren Price's sole responsibility, as they served no family benefit. No alimony, due to lack of minor children and Naomi's independent income." She struck the gavel. Marriage dissolved. And just like that, 25 years collapsed into paper. Within a month, Darren lost his job. The video had spread too far, tagged and retagged. "Silver anniversary trader, Naomi speaks, paper is power." His company couldn't risk the scandal. Celeste had to sell her mansion to cover her share of debts. She moved into a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper. Darren lived there too, sleeping on a pull-out couch, driving an old Camry he bought back from me at half value. Each night she would murmur, "Son, if only you'd listened." And each night he would mutter, "Too late, Mom. Too late." Meanwhile, I settled in Miami, in the condo Aunt Josephine left me. Sunlight poured through tall windows, the ocean stretched blue and endless, and for the first time in decades, I woke without bracing for anyone's mood but mine. I founded a small publishing house. 5 young translators worked beside me, passionate, tireless, curious. We published novels people didn't know they needed until they read them. At night, I'd sit on the balcony with tea listening to waves. Aisha visited often. Candace called weekly. Life was quieter, steadier, stronger. Sometimes letters arrived from Darren. Apologies written in trembling script. I kept them in a drawer. Not to revisit pain but to remember resilience. And that's how truth unfolded, not in one blow but in pages, in microphones, in choices made under chandeliers. 6 months later, Darren drove a battered Camry through the city streets, the same streets where once he strode in tailored suits. He now worked as a taxi driver, wearing a faded polo with the company logo. His hands gripped the steering wheel not with power, but with resignation. Sometimes passengers recognized him. "Hey, aren't you the anniversary guy? The one from that video?" He'd flinch, then force a smile. That's all in the past. But the past clung like smoke. Tips were small, conversations awkward. In the rearview mirror, Darren saw not customers, but reflections of mistakes he couldn't outrun. At night, he returned to Celeste's cramped one-bedroom apartment. The wallpaper peeled. The air smelled faintly of mothballs and regret. He slept on the pull-out couch, listening to his mother sigh in the dark. "You should have chosen wisely, son," Celeste whispered more than once. "Too late, Mom," he always replied. Too late had become his mantra. Celeste, once the grande dame of her neighborhood, now shopped at discount stores, carrying her groceries in thin, crinkling bags. Neighbors who once nodded respectfully now whispered. Church friends avoided eye contact. She wrote checks carefully, hands trembling, remembering the days when she signed them with flourish. She often stared at her reflection, pearls gone, eyes dulled. One Sunday, sitting on her balcony, she said aloud to no one, "I thought I was protecting family dignity. Instead, I destroyed it." The silence after her confession was answer enough. Sierra, the mistress, bounced back the fastest. 2 months after the scandal, she appeared on Instagram draped in diamonds, her arm looped through a wealthy restaurateur 20 years her senior. The caption under her wedding photo read, "True love finds you when you least expect it. Blessed new life." Her followers gushed support. But late at night, when the filters came off and the jewelry sat heavy on the nightstand, Sierra scrolled through the viral anniversary video. She paused on Naomi's face, the calm, the composure, the strength under pressure. For the first time, Sierra whispered, "That's what power really looks like." Naomi's life blossomed in quiet, steady ways. Her small publishing house grew. 5 translators became 10. They specialized in forgotten voices, European authors whose works had never been translated into English. Her office smelled of paper and fresh ink. The walls were lined with manuscripts, sticky notes, and framed book covers. Each morning, sunlight poured in, and the team gathered with coffee mugs and laughter. One day, her young editor Anna approached her with wide eyes. "Naomi, do you realize what you did? You gave us jobs, but more than that, you showed us how to stand tall. My mom told me she was at that anniversary. She said she'd never seen such dignity." Naomi smiled softly. "I didn't feel dignified. I just felt tired of being silent." "That's what dignity is," Anna said simply. On warm Miami nights, Naomi sat on her balcony overlooking the ocean. The waves shimmered silver under the moonlight. She sipped tea, listening to the rhythm of the tide, thinking of her past life only as a chapter closed. Candace visited often. They would laugh, cry, and sometimes sit in companionable silence watching stars. Aisha remained her fierce protector and confidant, calling weekly to check on her. Sometimes letters from Darren still arrived. Apologies inked in shaky handwriting. She never replied. She didn't need to. The silence was her answer. One evening as the city glowed, Naomi whispered to herself, "I am not a victim. I am not even a survivor. I am simply free." And to you listening now, remember this. Betrayal can break you only if you let it. Truth is patient. It always finds its way to the microphone. And dignity? It isn't loud. It's steady, calm, unshaken, even under chandeliers. So, dear friends, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Which city, which story are you living? Your voices, your support keep these stories alive. If Naomi's journey moved you, leave a like, share your thoughts, or send a super thanks. With love and respect. Until the next story.